Where is he?
Where are you? Skull Rock. Do you know it?
Hello, everybody. This is Stacy over at the Skull Rock broadcast. I am joined by...
Hello, this is Megan. Welcome back to our Stranger Things podcast. We are happy to be back and we are super excited as always, but especially about our episode today. So before we get into it, how's it going, Stacy?
It's going, man. I mean, just going with the flow. Tomorrow's the eclipse. What about yourself?
I'm okay. Feel like it was a busy week at work. Lots going on, but yeah, we're happy to be here. This is our
Absolutely.
distraction from all of that real life stuff.
And you know what's great? It's because today we are doing our deep dive with our season 1, episode 1 rewatch.
Yes. So we officially are starting our rewatch, and like we've said, we rewatch this all the time, but we're being intentional about this rewatch so that we can dive deep with all of you to the bottom of Lover's Lake. So, yeah, we're super excited to start that, to talk about the vanishing of Will Byers. Before we get into it, is there anything we need to kind of chat about that happened this week in kind of the Stranger Things world?
Well, I know a lot of fans overseas were very, very lucky because Joseph Quinn just recently had an appearance at a convention.
Yeah, where was that? Was it in Belgium?
I think it was Belgium, yes.
Okay, super cool. Yeah, and we're excited that he's still doing conventions because I know he's getting a lot of big blockbuster roles. So we are happy that he's still kind of finding time to do some conventions. It seems like he has a good time at them. And he just looked adorable. He was all like freshly clean shaven and
Probably still rocking the gladiator haircut a little bit. I do like that a fan asked, actually, if he knows if he's coming back for season 5. And in typical JQ fashion, he kind of giggled and said that he does know, but he's not going to tell anybody. So that was fantastic.
I think it's so funny, though. I was thinking about the dichotomy of like back a couple years ago, his hard line was, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. Over and over, that was his line. I don't know. But like now he's saying, I do know at this point, but I'm not telling you because obviously he can't say anything. Like,
oh, yeah. Netflix, I think, would have a hit out on him if he did.
Yeah, exactly. But the poor thing cannot get away from that question.
Nope.
And it was just so funny how he was very coy and giggly about it. So I don't know if that was because he was put on the spot and just felt awkward or if we can read into it, but we'll see. He was signing some cool things. I saw him signing a copy of the Eddie Munson book, The Flight of Icarus. He was signing Fantastic Four posters, and he just seemed so tickled to be signing those, which is really cool. Anything else? Oh, I did finally listen to the podcast, the Off Menu podcast that
Oh, how was that?
Finn Wolfhard was on with them. And I guess one of the co-hosts is actually in the Ghostbusters movie also.
Really?
So, yeah, it kind of makes me want to see it even more now.
Yeah.
But they were talking like Finn and I want to say James. Yeah, because it's Ed and James, I think. And I think it was James that was in Ghostbusters with Finn. But they were talking about like going out to dinner with Paul Rudd. And
Oh, my God. That's
like,
amazing.
yeah, it's so cool. And well, they always have like a secret menu item that they like kind of want the person to say during the interview. And it was eggs with maple syrup. And I like didn't super get the reference when I was listening to the podcast. And then we rewatched the episode last night and Mike is pouring the maple syrup on his
Drowning
eggs.
them. Yep.
And then Nancy is talking about how it's so gross, so he starts pouring some on her eggs. And I was like, That's hilarious. So, yeah, that was a very entertaining. I mean, that podcast is hilarious. Also, Joe Keery is still doing lots of promotion and kind of radio interviews and stuff like that for End of Beginning going
Hmm.
viral. So he was on a SiriusXM Hits One verified radio show, which was kind of cool. He played a bunch of songs and talked in between the songs a little bit about just his career and making music and his inspiration and creative process, some of his favorite bands. He talked about how he was very inspired by School of Rock as a kid,
Oh, I love that.
which such a classic.
Hmm.
And that he had a Lord of the Rings poster in his room.
Aw,
So such a nerd at heart like us, so we love
love
it.
that. Love that.
Yeah, so that's just some of the things that have kind of been going on this week, I guess,
Hmm.
in our little sphere. Oh, and I think Jamie had a convention too, and maybe some new music coming out.
Yeah, I did see that he had some like teasers for his music video, I believe. I have
Yeah, that
yet to
looks
check
pretty
out
cool.
his music, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. We are going to get into season 1, episode 1, like we said, and we're trying to make this interactive for you. So if you didn't notice last night on our Twitter or X page, we did just do some live reactions as we were watching the episode, which was super fun. So
Hmm.
every time we watch an episode, we'll kind of try to switch it up and do something different to make it fun and allow everyone to follow along. So,
Here we go. Get ready to dive off the canoe, grab your flashlight, because we're going on a deep, deep dive of season 1, episode 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers.
I love that it opens to just like a starry night.
And such an iconic, like, because it shows the date. It's November 6th, 1983. And that is officially now Stranger Things Day because it is the day that Will went missing.
Yes, because he goes missing that evening, and then that whole episode kind of spans from the 6th into the 7th, so 2 days.
Hmm.
I think it's so interesting that all of the seasons really happen over the course of just like a week,
Yeah.
basically. Other than like maybe at the end, sometimes there's a little bit of a time jump, but pretty much all 4 seasons, it's like 5 to 6 days,
Yeah.
and
Tough.
that's it. I always feel like it opens at the Dungeons and Dragons game, but you actually see the lab first.
Yes. Which, going into it, because Netflix beforehand, they had had a couple of shows, and this was an entirely new format for audiences because usually old school, you would get an episode a week if you were lucky. And if you missed it, you missed it. So this was like kind of like a new era of being able to binge watch. So, when I went into it, because it dropped July of 2016, all I knew was it had Winona Ryder. It was about a missing kid. So that opening scene, which takes place at the lab, and you see this scientist kind of running down a hallway with alarms going and getting into an elevator completely panicked, and something grabs him, but you don't see what it is. So it's kind of up to the audience to use their imagination, which sometimes I'm a firm believer, the less you see, the scarier it is.
And you don't really see the monster until much later in the season. So it is kind of just up to you to fill in what's happening. And it cuts to
The D&D
the
game.
D&D game at Mike's house. How did that kind of set things up for you? Because I had never like known about Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe I'd heard of it, but I have
Mhm.
never played or anything like that. So I didn't really exactly know what they were doing, I guess, when I first watched it.
Yeah, kind of the same with me. As far as I knew, Dungeons and Dragons were like a choose your own adventure book thing, not a
Okay.
game, but they are playing a game and we're introduced to our young leads, which are Mike, Lucas, Dustin, and Will. And it just gives such, E.T. Goonie vibes. Like as soon as I saw that scene of them all playing down the basement, it made me immediately think of the scene of E.T. when they're all making Elliot, go pick up the pizza for them because all the teenage boys are playing a game. I think they struck gold with the actors because that's hard to find that many talented child star actors. And they really did because they're just adorable. They're all playing like maybe 11, 12 tops. And we're kind of shown that they're doing a D&D campaign and Will's up and they tell him, okay, the Demogorgon is coming to attack you. What do you do? Do you fight or do you cast protection? Which I'm like, huh, foreshadowing.
I really think that it's all gonna come down to Will in season 5,
Mhm.
and I'm so interested in, like, I don't know, maybe he should have cast protection. Like,
Whew.
how are we gonna defeat this monster in season 5? Like, based on the intro,
Mhm.
it's gonna be down to Will, and he's gonna have a choice to make, I think.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. The kids' energy just right off the bat, I think is infectious,
Yeah.
and I think that you're so drawn to them from the moment you sit down and start watching this episode that you're invested in them, you want to see what happens. They're so entertaining to watch
Yeah.
from, the moment that we love of Dustin offering the pizza to Nancy,
I
which
know.
kind of ties her in right away
Yeah.
to like Mike arguing with his mom, which is just a classic.
Yeah.
No, Mike, you've been playing for 10 hours? What?
That kills me. You're gonna ruin the flow, mom. Yeah.
And then with them biking home, I think right away is like reminiscent of other 80s movies where
Mhm.
they're kind of like riding bikes all over the place. That whole scene I think is just so iconic.
And I do love right before they leave, you see the lights kind of flicker out in the garage or the carport, whatever you call it. And I do like that right before Will jumps on his bike, he tells Mike it was a 7, the Demogorgon. He got me. And it gives us chills, obviously, because we know what happens. But,
Yeah.
it just goes to show you that, that's kind of typical child behavior when the dice magically rolls underneath the table and you're like, "Well, do the person see
It
it?" You
doesn't
know?
count. It doesn't count.
Exactly, and I do like that it's our first introduction to that wonderful instrumental song of Kids, which
Yes.
is just so iconic, and Dustin and Will, they have a little bet when they race home. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Dustin says, like, the fastest one wins the X-Men 152, is that the number?
X-Men 134.
134, and we have talked about this on the podcast before, that
Mhm.
comic, that volume, you can tell I'm not a comic person, but that's the one that introduces something called the Hellfire Club,
Yep,
right?
that's the nightclub in the 1960s for all the mutants. So, very ahead of their time, I guess.
Just knowing that that was going to be the one that they talk about in the very first scene of the first episode, and
Mhm.
then the Hellfire Club is gonna come back, so that was really cool. And this is where I was getting ahead of myself because I was talking about how you don't see the monster, which
Yep.
is the Demogorgon, till later in the season, but I think that after season 4, a lot of people are like, "Well, what took Will was not the Demogorgon."
Mhm.
So the music just suddenly stops, and then it's just like crickets, birds, owls, or whatever,
Yep.
and it's quiet, and Will's still biking. Just like you said, the lights flash at Mike's, the light on his bike flashes,
Yep.
and then we see this silhouette in the road that actually looks a lot more like Vecna
Yep.
than the Demogorgon. So now that we know, it definitely kind of doesn't really look like the Demogorgon, but I guess it could have been in the road. That's what we, I guess, were led to believe
Mhm.
originally in season 1. He crashes his bike, he runs, and he gets into the house, and he looks out the window, and you can see it there too. You can see
Terrifying.
it coming, and it's very it's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Don't you hear a clock chime? Am I
You
making that up?
do. Yes, right when he
Ooh.
picks up the phone, you hear the clock chime also. Oh, and the Demogorgon can't control things with its mind, as
Nope.
far as we know, but the lock unlocks
Mm-hmm.
on the front door. Just like later when, 11 is coming into the house in season 2,
Yep.
it, like, has the same, like, the lock unlocks.
Mhm.
So, something's coming into the house to follow him, and I think we're in agreement that this is Vecna.
Yeah.
So, he goes into the shed. I don't really know the mechanics of, like, how he was taken. I don't know if we ever really get that explained because the light bulb glows really brightly and then
He
he's
turns
gone.
around, sees something, and then gone. So imagine being the audience back in 2016. You're like, what the fuck just happened? Like,
Yeah.
is he, where'd he go? And I love that that's our almost like cold opening. And that's the first time we're ever introduced to the iconic opening title sequence, which, like I said, it's Stephen King, Viking publishing print. And it's just so with the synthwave music and that Stranger Things iconic theme playing. I remember one time, I think I've said this before, I was watching with my sister and she skipped the intro and I gave her such a freaking dirty look. I went, are you even a fan? So, you got to watch the title sequence, but it just leaves such a mystery to you. And I remember hearing in an interview with the Duffer Brothers, when they originally wrote this show, they were like, okay, the amazing movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman, they were like, we want to make the movie Prisoners about missing children, but add monsters to it. And dare
Mm.
they accomplish that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's cool to see, like, who are, like, the top billed cast in the opening credits also because it
Mm,
changes each season.
yeah,
So, I think in the first season, we've got, obviously, Winona Ryder, David Harbour. We don't have Noah Schnapp because I feel like he is more of a minor character in season 1.
I
He
agree. Yeah.
doesn't have a lot of scenes because he's basically just missing. So we've
Mhm.
got the 3 boys, we've got Millie, and I think that's pretty much it for,
Yeah.
like, oh, and Kara. Kara
Yeah.
Bono is always a top billed character, so
Yep. Keep that in the back of our brains.
interesting.
Yeah. The next is Hopper waking up in his trailer, which when you tweeted last night, does he live off Lover's Lake? Guys, I've probably rewatched this episode over 100 times, and I went, "Oh my god, I think Megan's right."
Yeah, well, it's definitely a lake, but I was remembering in season 2, like, there are a couple lakes when Bob is, like, talking about the map, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's Lover's Lake, so I guess that would be Lake Jordan." So, like, there's a couple of different lakes. I love this scene as an introduction to
Mm,
Hopper because he's just a mess, right? And he
yeah.
lives on the lake, which this is the only season where you see him living in that trailer
Yeah.
because then he basically moves into
His
the
cat.
cabin.
Yeah.
So he's on the lake, he is asleep, he's passed out on the
A
couch,
lot of
basically.
empties,
There's a lot of empties, there's a lot of cigarettes in the ashtrays, there's a book on the table, and it's The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway.
Ooh, all right.
So, I was like, "Okay." So,
Yep, that
Hopper's
tracks.
Hopper's some reading some Hemingway,
Yep.
but then he's popping his pills.
I did look up what pill they are. They're basically for the 1980s, a sedative and a painkiller. So
Okay.
clearly Hopper's got some demons going on right now. And doesn't he still like you see children's drawings taped up of we later on learn that that's Sarah, his late daughter's drawings.
Yeah. I
So
that was
sad.
the first time I think I had noticed that actually when they open that scene, the camera is on the
On it.
drawing,
Yeah.
and it's like a house, 2 adults, and a child,
Mhm.
and we, I guess, know that it was Sarah's drawings, and I'm so curious if, like, the whole Sarah storyline is going to, like, tie in to
Yeah.
everything also, because I think that would be really cool.
I like that there's the reveal too, that like you see him getting ready, and like you said, it just looks like a total mess, but then you see him put on his uniform and
Yeah.
you suddenly realize, oh, this is a police officer, this is the chief of police, so that was really interesting. And his Trek is just, I don't know, it gives me Jaws vibes all around, like Chief Brody. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if I had ever put this together. I guess I kind of knew in the back of my mind, but the Lego set that I've been working on,
Yeah.
the instruction manual has some like fun little like tidbits about the show in it
Oh, cool.
because it was actually talking about the font and how it was a Stephen King novel font. Like that
Yep.
was in the Lego instruction manual. And it was talking about Hopper being heavily inspired by Indiana Jones
I
with especially with the hat.
love that. I
Which
love
I don't
that.
know if I had ever like consciously made that like
No,
connection before either. So I mean, you know how I feel about Harrison Ford.
exactly. Sabrina vibes all around for Megan.
So, Han Solo, Indiana Jones just does it for me. So, maybe that's why I love Hopper so much. You've talked about the blue hair tie. It's
Yes.
on his wrist in the very first episode.
My God.
So, that blue hair tie is
It's
from
been
the
there since the
first moment.
beginning. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, so we find out later it was, like, one of his daughter's hair ties, and
Yep.
then he ends up having it on his wrist, and I think at some point he gives it to 11?
Yep.
It's so cool the little details they include. So, the news is on in Hopper's trailer when he is getting ready,
Mhm.
and they're talking about how there were power outages and power surges, like, all over town the night
Yep.
before with, like, a storm coming and everything like that. So, that was cool because you did see, like, the lights flickering,
Yep.
and I don't know if this means anything or if it's just random, but then I was trying to listen in to what, like, the next news story goes into because
Mhm.
it just says, like, "The news continues indistinctly," or something like that. But it
Mhm.
was like, "Can you remember your favorite stuffed toy from childhood and how heartbroken you were when it left your life? Then you'll relate to the story of a girl named" and then I can't understand what they're saying anymore.
Interesting. Interesting. Our next scene is Winona Ryder, which I love that this was like her big, big comeback, because she's just such an icon with her career that she's had, streaming from the 1980s to now. And it's her getting ready for work. And you see that, clearly she looks like she's a single mom and her teenage son, Jonathan's making breakfast. And I love how it shows how frazzled she is, something that they kind of continued into season 2 about her having no idea where her keys are. And it's just a perfect setup of her realizing that Will never came home that night.
Yeah, I think it's a great introduction to her and to Jonathan and just their relationship. They reconnect, I guess,
Yeah,
throughout this episode, which is nice, but it sucks that like they're reconnecting
true
because
that.
Will is missing. But her performance throughout this entire episode and obviously throughout the entire season, the entire
Hmm.
show is like absolutely one of the best performances. And it's so realistic how frazzled and worried she
Hmm.
is and how much of a fighter she is that she's like, I want to know, like, where's my kid? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna just let people tell me that he's skipping school or something like that.
Joyce calls to like see if maybe Will had just spent the night,
Mhm,
and you get
mhm.
to see the whole Wheeler family around the table and kind of a funny little interaction between Mike and his older sister Nancy.
Yeah, I love just, like, the little ways that they tie together everybody in the first episode
Hmm.
because you see all the boys at Mike's house, and then you see Nancy, and then you see the Byers' house, and then you see her call the Wheeler house, and then that's when you get to see the Wheelers again, and then it connects back to the boys at school, and then we see Nancy again, so it all just, like,
Hmm.
flows together so beautifully, I feel like. Yeah, lots of bickering around the table, but I love that they're all just sitting there eating
Eating, yeah.
eggs, like, on a school day, like
Oh, that's way too heavy, man. Mistakes are made, but yeah, it's always like that ongoing joke that in the movies, the mom makes the big breakfast and stuff. And I liked Renona's acting because you can tell that she's already starting to panic a little bit. But she's like, was that Will in the background? And, Mrs. Wheeler's like, no, that was just Mike. And I like that you see her getting anxious. Now, we're not mothers, but I can only imagine what that feeling is. And of course, the 1980s, it was a different time, especially in a smaller town. Kids did stay over, and this was before cell phones. But I do like that Jonathan, you can tell he's guilty, but he's like, I picked up another shift. And we don't know where exactly that job or what that job is, but you can tell that they're like lower middle class because she is a single working mom. And he's like, I just figured we needed the money. So if her teenage son is trying to pick up shifts, obviously they're struggling a little bit. And, you just hear her going over and over and over to him, like, I can't believe you. You were supposed to be here, which I think is a huge motivation for Jonathan for the rest of this season because he feels so guilty that he wasn't there. And him as the big brother, his job was supposed to look out for his younger brother,
Yeah, definitely.
Because like 1980s, like that's a scary time to go missing. Like nowadays, there's cameras everywhere, like you went missing in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
Talk about scary, and you just see Joyce like right away, almost like it's a mother's intuition. She knows something's up. We immediately jump to the Hawkins middle and the Hawkins high school, which are what? They're down the hill from each other? That's the setup?
I'm pretty sure some of the scenes that you see of Hawkins Middle are actually filmed inside of the same building as the high school. In the show, yeah, they're supposed to be like right next to each other, right down the hill from each other.
We do meet the boys, Lucas, Dustin, and Mike. They, ride their bikes to school, and we're introduced to the two bullies where, like, what little dicks.
Yeah.
And I do like that, they kind of make Dustin do his, like, kind of like hand thing. And right away you hear Mike going, I think it's really cool that you can do that. Like Mr. Fantastic, which I
Yeah,
do love that, and you hear Dustin be like, "Well, yeah, I wish I had special powers," which foreshadowing, they're going to meet
exactly.
someone who does.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
But those bullies, I don't even know what their names are because I feel like you just don't remember the bullies' names, but
No.
they're just such classic, like, 80s bullies
Yeah.
too, I feel like.
Then we cut to the high school. And this is what I really liked was they show Nancy at the beginning of the show. She's dressed in soft pastels. Her hair is long and down. She's got her little ballet slipper necklace. She's very like girly girl,
Yeah.
We're introduced to her going to her locker, meeting her best friend, Barb, who's kind of going like, did he call? Did he call? Which swoon worthy. That's all I'm saying, which I died at your tweet going, how did Nancy know which bathroom to meet Steve at?
I know, was he just hanging out in the girls' bathroom, like, all morning?
I would be mortified.
I mean, because he's not gonna make Nancy come into the boys' bathroom,
And
right?
that bathroom was way too clean to be a boy's
I
bathroom.
didn't see any urinals.
Could you imagine being in the stall, he's in the other stall, and you going, "Hey, do you got a tampon?" That would be my luck, asking Steve Harrigton for a fucking tampon. So, I thought that was a great introduction that he's this popular, like, jock, and Nancy kinda has a thing going with him, so them making out in the bathroom, I was just like, "Look at this," like, classic
Yeah.
season 1 Steve.
I think I kind of, like, related a little bit to Nancy when I was first watching it because, she seemed like the girl that wasn't really in the popular crowd, she was more in, like, the smart kids kind of crowd,
Mhm.
and I feel like that was kind of like me in high school, like but she, had this crush on the popular cute guy,
Yep.
and, of course, you're gonna, like, I don't know, like who wouldn't have a crush
Go
on
for
Steve
it, girl.
Harrington?
Yeah.
Like, and good for Steve for, like, going for, like, the smart, like, a little bit more down to earth girl rather than whatever Becky or whatever.
We'll have to get to that later, but, like, literally, I
Yeah.
lifted all the girls up. I was like, "Damn, Steve, look at you getting around." But I do like that Joe Keery and Natalia, they have such great chemistry even from the very beginning, and it's so funny to see them in season 1 to how they look now as their characters in season 4/5. So I do like, him being like, "Oh, why do you think I want it to be quiet so we can study?" It's just such a playful scene.
Yeah, they're so playful, and it's so fun that, like, the first time you see Steve is just, like, going at it, making out in the
Yep,
bathroom.
doing what he does best.
Classic heartthrob.
Ugh, you stole my heart. But the next scene is Hopper arriving to work at the Hawkins
Yeah.
PD, and the most iconic line is,
Mornings are for coffee and contemplation.
I love it, "Coffee and contemplation." So right, come on now.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're introduced to Officer Powell and Officer Callahan, who stay on, for all 4,
Throughout.
5
Yeah.
seasons. Yeah, which I thought was
Yeah.
great. The only person that was missing from season 4, which kind of makes sense because we didn't really see Hawkins PD, was Flo, the secretary. But I
Okay.
do like that the last time we saw her, she was delivering the Hawaiian shirt to Hopper in season 3. But I do love that, like him just arriving late to work and, he's chomping on a donut and drinking his coffee. And Flo tries to like give him a heads up that Joyce Byers has been here for an hour and she's very
Right.
worried. And it's him typing up old school on the typewriter, the missing person report. And we kind of see how she's starting to get more frantic and worried. And we get to hear a little bit about her ex, Will's father, Lonnie.
Yeah, we hear about Lonnie. We get a little taste of, like, the history
Mm-hmm.
between, like, the 3 of them, with Joyce saying that, like, Lonnie wouldn't talk to Hopper if he calls and
Yeah.
stuff, and you can really kind of right off the bat see that Lonnie is, like, an awful human being, like,
Yeah.
just the language that Joyce uses to
Mhm.
describe what Lonnie says about his own son.
Yeah, just using a slur, like, it's just it makes your stomach toss that
Yeah,
that's the I wouldn't even call him a father, like, just he's not in the picture, he's really never been that good to his children. So,
yeah,
I like that Hopper almost, like, right off the bat, kinda, like, you can tell he has history with Lonnie and Joyce, so he's just kinda, like, try to almost, like, calm her down, being like, "Nothing happens in this town," and says the whole thing about, the owl
yeah,
scratching the old woman's head, thinking it was a nest. So it's almost like, like in all these classic, novels and movies, this is a small town. Nothing ever happens in a small town.
mhm,
And this was long before, Amber Alert. This was, before, if a child went missing, they would immediately spring into action. This is a small town. And this was the 80s. Kids did skip. Kids did, take off into the woods or hang out at their friend's house. But Joyce, you can see a mother's love because she knows her son and she knows that something's wrong. And I love like just that desperate delivery of hers going, find my son, Hop, find him.
yeah, yeah. We do get a little bit of a cut back to the lab at this point. We see Dr. Brenner at the lab, and we see that something is going wrong, like, all these
Yeah.
people are showing up, and it's the first time we're kind of seeing from back to the very beginning of the episode, like,
Hmm.
what's happening at this government lab. The first time we see Dr. Brenner waiting for these people that are showing up, and
Yeah.
then we do see the gate for the first
Yes.
time. So, this is kind of like I guess the most, like, sci-fi type element
Hmm.
that we see in the show because it's this, like, disgusting, like, tentacle-y
Yeah.
we don't know that it's a gate, it's just, like, something wrong.
Something. Yeah. Something ain't right. Yeah.
Yeah, very, like, kind of alienish in a way. So, we do just get a brief, like, look at that.
And I like that it gives like, and I know you're still yet to see this movie, but it gives major Stephen King Firestarter vibes.
Mm.
And it just goes to show you something isn't right, something very unnatural. And seeing Matthew Modine, whoo, Silver Fox Daddy, like, he's such an incredible actor, but seeing him in that kind of role, he almost feels like a Stephen King character, like, just with his
Yeah,
white hair, and that he says a line like, "The girl, she couldn't have gotten very far."
right. And then we cut to
Mhm.
11, which is the first time we see her?
Yep, barefoot,
Yeah.
walking in the woods.
In her hospital gown, which if you notice, there's a little piece missing. They kind of zoom into this piece missing on the
Yep,
hospital gown, which comes back, I think, in, like, the next episode.
mhm.
Mr. Clark finds that
Finds
piece
it.
of the hospital
That
gown. Like,
notorious tunnel.
we see her, she's walking in the woods, and she comes across Benny's diner,
Yep.
which oh,
Oh,
Benny.
Betty's.
I, like, can't. He deserved so much better.
Yeah.
He is, like, such a, like, just good person, like, he wanted to help her.
He definitely was, and it goes to show you what a nice guy he was. He's running his little, privately owned burger joint, and there's a few, like, old-timers, like, regulars that he's chatting with, and 11 is filthy, we don't know who she is, and she starts, like, eating fries out of a basket in the kitchen, and he catches her, and he runs after her, catches her, and he's like, "You think you can steal from me, boy?" And that's when it kinda dawns on him, "Oh, shit, no, this is a little girl," you know?
Yeah.
So, woo, but just the fact that, like, he fed her and, like, tried to do the right thing, little did he know the phones were tapped, but tried to do the right thing in getting her help, and there are few scenes that they do have together pull on the heartstrings because he really was
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the music in those scenes. We see 11 use her powers for the first time in the diner also
Yep,
because the fan is very noisy, so she kind of, like, stops it with her
yep.
mind, and that's the first time we realize that, "Oh, shit, this little girl does have superpowers."
Yep, which I think is just so cool. I don't think her nose bleeds in that scene, but as
Mm-mm.
the show continues, you notice every time she uses her power, she uses a lot of, like, energy and her nose bleeds, which I forgot to reference this when we first were talking about Firestarter. Drew Barrymore's father has the abilities to, and it's called push people, like make them do whatever he wants. But every time he
Yeah.
does it, his nose bleeds. So I was like,
Oh.
oh, look at that. So I thought that was a really cool reference. And I do love when he's feeding her, he's like, well, what's your name? And her going 11. And just like the horrified look on his face when she points to herself, being like, no, that's my name, 11. I'm a number, basically. You
Yeah.
can tell something isn't right, and just what a great actor, because you can tell that he's, like, horrified that this little girl came from God knows where, you know?
Right, because he notices the tattoo first,
Mhm.
and then she makes the connection that, like, that's her, that's
Yeah.
11, that's her name, basically. Oh, and, I have eaten at the diner where they filmed
Have
Benny's
you
Diner.
really?
Yeah, so it's actually like a working family-owned diner,
Oh my
so
god. But the next scene, it goes to the kids, in Mr. Clark's science
mhm.
class. And Mr. Clark is just one of those old school teachers that he makes learning fun. And you can tell the kids are hanging on every word he's saying. And he tells Lucas, Dustin, and Mike that it came, which ends up showing that they're part of the AV club. And they got this like huge CB radio that has this huge bandwidth that they can talk to people in Australia. And I do love Lucas being like, Will sees this, he's gonna totally blow his shit. Mr. Clark's like,
Yeah,
Lucas.
language.
Ah."
Yeah, they're so excited about the radio, and you kinda get a sense of, like, the type of nerds they
Yeah.
are and, like, being, like, the teacher's pets, basically, with Mr. Clark, who Mr. Clark is such a cool character too, throughout the show, but I think it's cool that we start with this radio, right? The radio is definitely, like, a theme throughout the show also because
Yeah.
the kids have got their radios, but, like, they're super excited about this radio that can talk to Australia, and then in season 5, there's definitely gonna be some sort of radio connection because, I mean, we'll have to, like, talk about this later, but we've seen some things in, like, the filming updates that
Yep.
connect to a radio. So that's definitely gonna be like a recurring theme that you see right in the first
Mhm.
episode too.
Because you go back to even with Dustin's Cerebro, which is an X-Men reference, the radio that he builds and that he ends up getting connected to his house in season 4. But walkie-talkies, like, I don't know about you, Megan, but, like, they were big even when we were younger.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, it was a simpler time, I guess, and this takes place before we were even born, but radios, that was your form of communication. There were no cell phones, so I do love that that's how all the boys are in touch with each other, that they use the radios.
And then we again have like a little connection because we've seen Hopper with Joyce. Now we see Hopper show up at the school to
Yeah,
talk to the boys. So we have
love
the
that scene.
hilarious scene of them sitting on the couch, which it's a little bit of a throwback in season 4 when they're sitting on the couch getting interrogated by the police, except like instead of Mike, you've got like Max on the couch with the boys.
Yeah.
But they're arguing because they say that Will takes Mirkwood, which is a made up name, and they made it up based on The Hobbit, but
Yeah.
they argue about whether it's from Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Hopper looks so over it too. He's just like,
Yeah.
you can tell his patience is just so thin with these boys that are just arguing and talking a mile a minute. And he kind of warns them, being like, no, you guys stay put. You are not helping to go look for your friend.
Cut to Castle Byers.
Yes. First time seeing Castle Byers.
There's another Lord of the Rings reference in this scene because the password
Oh,
that
yeah.
that Joyce has to say to get into Castle Byers, is Radagast, and Radagast the Brown is a wizard and an associate of Gandalf in the
Oh,
works of
shit.
Tolkien.
That. See, I didn't even put that together. That's amazing.
I was like, "What's Radagast?" So I
Yeah.
had to look it up.
I do love the flashback though of Joyce surprising Will with Poltergeist tickets. So that probably took place a year beforehand in '82. But this season is very heavily inspired by Poltergeist. Have you ever seen it?
No, I wanted you to talk to me about that too because I love that she's getting him tickets to that, and I was like, "I wanna know what the connection is because 'cause I've never seen
Oh,
it."
I'm telling you, I think you would be able to handle it because Poltergeist was directed by Toby Hooper, who did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the ongoing thing is Spielberg basically made it. You know, he was a
Okay, okay.
producer, but he basically did it. And it's a haunted house story, but in the suburbs. And it's about a child that goes missing that's pulled into another world. And the
Oh.
way they're able to contact the mother to this child is through the TV, whatever there's static on. So it gave me huge Poltergeist vibes that the telephone is the way that Will tries to communicate, along with the Christmas lights, that he's in another dimension, another world, trying to communicate with his mother. So
Yeah.
Poltergeist was, I think, very, very big on inspiring this first season.
And then, I mean, that does sound like a connection to the static on the TV that Elle uses sometimes.
Yep.
So, that's so
Isn't that so
fascinating.
great?
Yeah. So, I love Castle Byers, and I love that we're getting, again, Castle Byers back in season
Yeah.
5, so that throwback to the beginning, and just knowing that, like, it was this safe space that he was
Yeah.
kind of able to find for himself when he was in the Upside Down, so
Mhm.
we see him in Castle Byers, like, in that flashback, and then it also connects to other seasons because, like, I think in season 2, Jonathan tells Will, like, "Do you remember when dad left?" And that's when we
Mhm.
built Castle Byers, so, like, it was, like, this outlet for them to have this, like, safe space
Yeah.
when they were going through, like, a tough time together.
So we already went over Benny feeding 11, and we
Mhm.
see her using her power with the fan. But the next scene after that is Hopper with Callahan, Officer Callahan, yelling for Will, and he finds Will's bike off on the side of the road in the woods. And I
Right.
like that he goes, because right away Callahan's like, maybe just crashed and walked. And he's like, no, 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 a bike like this is like a Cadillac to a kid. He would have walked it home.
And then they take it home to the buyer's house, and that's when they kind of, like, search the house, and Hopper's starting to make the connection that Will did go home.
Which goes to show you what a great, like, detective or officer he is, that he notices things that I don't think the average person would notice.
What's the dog's name? Like, this poor dog.
I don't know its name, but I did mention that we all know that the dog, I guess, was kinda like
A bad actor.
a bad actor and was, like, kinda not really the best trained. So there was gonna be a scene where you saw its grave in season 2 to kinda explain where the fuck the dog went, but, yeah, we get to see the dog in this scene,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they never really explain, like, why the Byers don't have a dog anymore in season 2, but Leia was watching the TV last night when the dog was barking, so that was really
Aw,
funny.
that's adorable.
So he goes into the shed, though, so he has this, like, sense of, like, that's probably where Will went, and I feel like I didn't really connect until when I watched it last night that something kind of happens when he's in there and the lights go out and he can't hear anybody else outside
No.
because when they finally come in they're like, we were calling your name, like, what, are you deaf? So something happened where he was almost like in the upside down.
Did you have your subtitles on? Because this was the
Yes.
first time I had it on, it said, like, squishing
Yes,
noises.
the
I was like,
squelchy noises.
"What?"
Yeah, which is what they always talk about with, like, the in the Upside Down is the squelching noises, and
Mhm.
you hear it, and it's almost like he looks down, and you feel like he's gonna see, like, a gate or something like
Yeah.
that, and then he gets, like, startled
Yeah.
out of it, and I think that he kind of has, based on what happens in there, this really bad feeling about what happened to Will, because that's when he's like, "We're putting together a search
Brings
party."
into action, yeah, and right away,
Yeah,
Callahan's like, "Do we have a problem here?" And he's like, "I wanna round up a search party immediately."
yeah,
So, whew, I'm so glad you picked up on that because right away I was like, "Oh my god, I never noticed that you can hear upside down noises in the shed."
yes, yes,
Ooh.
and it's like he's, like, blocked out from everything else, like,
Mhm.
it's almost like he's in the Upside Down for a second, and that's where Will was taken, so there's obviously some sort of, like, portal situation in the shed.
Yep. And then we switch to the Wheelers having dinner. They're having a chicken, and I do love hope you're enjoying your chicken, Ted. I do love that right away, like, yet again, brilliant casting on all the actors because Mike feels like he's the only one that's concerned. He wants to go look for his friend. And Karen is actually being the voice of reason, being like, "You're not going anywhere." Na-
Exactly, yeah.
Nancy's trying to be a little sly, being like, me and Barb are gonna go study, and I do love that Mike's like,
That's okay, right?
you just wanna hang out with Steve, and I love Ted going, "Steve?" Like, just kills me, and baby Holly the whole time is sitting in her high chair, just eating her slices of food. I was dying.
I always wonder if, like, we think that Karen could potentially have a bigger role, and I always, like, rewatch scenes, like, does she know more than we think she knows? And
Mm,
it's ambiguous, but, like, if you watch her scenes, like, a lot of the scenes, it kind of feels like she might know more than you think because she's very adamant about the
yeah.
fact that they're not going anywhere. And Nancy's a little mean in that scene, like, when
Yeah.
she's like, "It's not my fault Mike's friend got lost on his
Lost.
way home."
Yep.
Obviously, that's not what happened, Nancy. Like, wouldn't you be concerned if this was your brother?
And I think that goes to show you, like, the character growth we've gotten from Nancy because before
Yeah,
all this happened, she was kinda like a stuck-up, entitled teenager where she was inconvenienced. She wasn't able to meet up with Steve, so her whole evening was ruined to the badass we all know and love in season
yeah,
4.
and I mean, you have to have sympathy for her. Like, I remember being a teenager like her, like, I don't know why it made me think of this, but, like, when I wanted to get on the computer at my house to get on AOL Instant Messenger and talk to my friends,
Yep.
and my dad wouldn't let me get on, And I was just
Your
so
life was
mad, and my
ruined.
yes,
Yep.
exactly. My life is ruined because I can't have any more computer time tonight. Like,
Teenagers are assholes, guys. I'm telling
yes,
you. I was an
exactly.
asshole. Megan was an asshole. Nancy's an asshole. But
Yes.
I do love that whole scene. And of course, Karen looking at Ted being like, hope you're enjoying your chicken, Ted. And him going, what I do. I love that actor. But this next scene really like pulled on the heartstrings because we get to see the search party at night.
Yeah.
They're going through the woods. And Mr. Clark has this brief conversation with Hopper, and Hopper brings up how his daughter loved science and him being like, oh, what grade is she in? Maybe I'll have her next year. And he goes, oh, she lives with her mom, and like, thanks him and then very quickly walks ahead. So I do like that some people are aware that Hopper did have a daughter who's no longer here. Kind of like pulls Mr. Clark aside. She's like, she died. And she kind of like, just goes, oh, she died like a year or so before. And you just see Mr. Clark, who looks like, that really, really, made him emotional. You see him
Mhm.
kind of like looking at Hopper.
Which is interesting that he doesn't know, like, where did he come from?
Yeah.
That like, I've always had kind of, like, suspicions about Mr. Clark too, but
He's
I
the
think he's
real villain. Yep.
cut back to the Wheeler house,
Yes.
and Mike and Lucas are having, like, a conversation on the walkie again, where we
Mhm.
we get Mike policing Will's use of the walkie.
I do like that Mike brings up the point that the night before, Will could have casted protection, but he didn't. He fought to protect the party and that they should go out looking for him. I just love this subtle scene with no dialogue of Mike sneaking out, pushing his bike, and he sees Steve about to climb up to Nancy's bedroom, and Steve's caught, and he just
It's the
kind of like
best.
shrugs and gives him a look, and Mike looks so disgusted, which I love.
That's, like, sums up Steve and Mike's relationship right
Yeah,
there.
in a nutshell right there. But I do love how Steve sneaks like a ninja through Nancy's window, which I die at every
Yeah,
time.
he's so clumsy. Like, I feel like her parents definitely would have heard something.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I do love that. And the next scene is you find out that Benny had made a few phone calls and he was hoping that social services were going to come to pick up 11. And it's, her eating ice cream probably for the first time ever. And I do love that he's like, the smile looks good on you. And she just kind of smiles. And when he hears the door, he sees how tense she becomes. And he's like, don't worry, whoever it is, I'm going to make them go away. And unfortunately, we lose Benny in this
Yeah,
scene.
I hate that woman. Does she die at the end of this season?
Yeah, 11
Like,
kills her.
11 kills her? Okay.
Great.
Good riddance.
Yeah. Bitch. But yeah,
Yeah, like, she just shoots him, like,
and like
immediately.
as soon as he goes, like, oh, your voice sounds different on the phone, boom, which is shocking. And then what song is it that plays? Because
I'm, like, obsessed with it. It's White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane,
yes,
and it gets, like, very, like, loud and, like yeah.
what a badass moment too, because as that's playing, 11 is booking it and knocks down the two agents that go around back, and then we see Bremer come in and he like just missed 11 by a few seconds. It's such a
Yeah.
close call that, as an audience, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because these people clearly don't give an F and they're dangerous.
This is, like, when you really realize that they are, like, the bad guys, kind of.
Hmm.
Benny was trying to help her, and he is now dead, like, so we don't like these people.
We don't. They're the bad people, as 11 calls them. So I do love that you see Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. They're on their bikes and they stop in front of Mirkwood. And Dustin like can sense like it's going to start storming soon. And he's definitely the Stacy of the group, a little hesitant to go looking. And Mike is just determined we got to
Yeah.
look for our friend.
Yeah, Mike definitely keeps them going in that moment. He's basically like, "If you don't wanna come, you don't have to come, but let's
Yeah.
go." And then it does start raining, which the news said at the beginning of the episode that they were gonna need an umbrella that night. So
Should have watched the news. But I do like that it cuts to Steve and Nancy studying using the
yes.
flashcards. And I do love Steve being like, oh, for everyone you get right, I take an article of clothing off. It's vice versa to you, which who would have turned that down? But she does
Yeah.
mention the girls' names when he starts making out with her. And I love that she's like, my parents are here. And I laugh every time when Steve goes, I don't
I
see
don't
them in the
see
room.
them.
And her going, I'm
He's
not
such
like,
an asshole.
he really is, like, but you can't help but be like, "Oh, god damn it, he's charming." And she goes, "I'm not like Lori, Amy, or Becky." And he's like, "You mean you're not a slut?" And it just kills me. And then she says the iconic line when he goes, "You're beautiful, Nancy Wheeler." And she's like, "You're an idiot, Steve Harrigton." And what is it? The Rains of Africa by Toto is
Yeah.
playing. Classic. Classic.
And he, like, makes, like, the teddy bear, like, talk to her.
Yeah,
Like,
Steve. Oh my god. I'd be
he's
so charmed.
I know. Yeah, and I love that they're studying chemistry. Like
Mhm.
like
When
Steve
when
needs any help with his chemistry.
I love how he's like when she goes, "You failed chem," and he's like, "C minus." Just a really cute scene of them just being teenagers, and there's a throwback to that scene in season 4, which I thought was really cool. We cut to the Byers' house, and it's Joyce and Jonathan, and then they share a really tender moment when they're trying to look through photographs for what would be the best photo to use in the missing flyer for Will.
Yeah, yeah, and Joyce kind of, like, is complimenting his work, so you kind of find out that Jonathan is a photographer, and
Mhm.
you kinda see her, like, feeling bad that she has kind of, like, lost touch with him, but you can tell that they've been, like, close in the past as
Yeah.
well, and you can tell that she's, like, a good mom, but that's when the phone rings, right?
Yep. Our first phone call of us hearing very faintly Will calling his mother, which yet again, throw back to Poltergeist. And it like almost like electricity zaps through it, which, in future episodes, they write it off as the storm doing that. But obviously, it was something more upside downish.
Yeah, and I don't know that we've ever really gotten any explanation of that. You can Okay, in season 4, who can hear who?
The teens can hear Dustin, and the way they communicate is through the lights.
So the teens are in the Upside Down and they can hear Dustin.
Yeah,
So Will is able to hear
his mother.
his mom, but it's interesting that then she can also kind of hear him, and we don't
Through the
really have an
phone.
explanation for that.
Interesting.
Maybe we'll get more of an explanation in season 5 for that. Maybe they're driving Steve's car into the Upside Down.
Oh my god. Dude, my inner car nut cringed when I saw that they cut a hole in the roof, but it's all
I
good.
know. I saw somebody tweet that, like, Steve had a heart attack when they did that and died, and that's
That's why he hasn't been filming.
yeah, exactly.
I can't. Oh man, that's so
The
good.
the Beamer.
The final scene is obviously the boys going through the woods. It's pouring out, and they stumble upon 11, who is soaked and shivering and clearly terrified.
Yeah, and that's an iconic scene too with the flashlights and the rain, and
hmm
it's just very dramatic, so it's very cool. Ah, such a good episode.
What a great episode. And that's the kind of episode, and goes to show you what a great show this is. That's what instantly drew me in. Usually, when I get into a show, it takes a few episodes. As soon as I finished that, I went, oh my God, I need to see what happens next. So that is the
Yeah.
very first episode of The Vanishing of Will Byers.
Yeah, it has everything. It has something for everyone. It's
Mhm.
just so well done, so well put together. The details are so meticulous, like you feel like you're there. Very like period accurate to the 80s. Yeah, we just love everything about it, basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I just love just focusing on just that one episode and how much in that episode
They packed
has
in.
like Yes, and has not never gone away. Like, how
Nope.
many themes, how many, like, items, like the flashlights, the radios, the
Mhm.
telephone, like, the lights
Yep.
from, like, the very first scene. Even in the lab, in the very first scene, the lights are flashing.
Yep.
So, maybe Vecna at the beginning, which we we don't know. I guess they knew about him
Mhm.
while they were making season 1,
Yep.
right? Because, like, I think the biggest clue that cannot be explained by a Demogorgon is the lock.
Yeah.
Like, the other 2 like, when you kinda see him, it could have been a
Could be, yeah.
Demogorgon, but, like, when you see the lock turn, like, that's it.
Yep.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job.
I mean, I have to say, Megan, I am like, I've met my final boss, and it is you. Like, I thought we were diving deep. Like, you were noticing stuff that clearly I had blanked on or hadn't even noticed before. And you know what? This is challenging me in the best way possible. So, game on with episode 2. Everyone, we had a huge debate. We'll probably be cutting it out, but I was like, Lake Jordan and Lover's Lake is the same lake. And Megan was awesome enough to actually check on it. And it's totally not, guys.
Yeah, they're
So
not. They're 2
you're not.
different lakes,
It's too
and
late.
also it's not flows.
It's not flow. I have met my match, ladies and gentlemen, and I can tell you this excites me because if we're digging this deep, like we're going past the gate, the mother gate,
Into the upside
we're
down.
going into the upside down. That's how deep we're going. So
Yeah.
this was
That
a one plus.
empty lake bed
Yep. Just vines
full of
everywhere.
vines and demobats.
I have to say that I'm very, very impressed, and this was a ton of fun, and I cannot wait.
But no, you can talk for, like, hours on end about all of these scenes, and I could not talk like you do about all of the scenes, but I can check you.
What's going on with filming, Megan? What's going on with filming?
We haven't had a ton of filming updates. The one thing that we did kind of touch on during the episode is that Steve's car has apparently been converted into some sort of mobile radio station
Yep.
with a huge antenna down the middle and drilled into the top. So we really don't know how Dustin convinced Steve to allow him to do this to his car.
Oh my god.
I mean, now think about take the money and run, man. It's
I
like
know. Like, what did you do to the Beamer? Jesus.
we did get a photo of that, but I think that's like the pretty much the only thing I can think of this
Yeah,
week.
that's pretty much it.
Oh, we did get hold on, we got a little bit from the broadcast channel of Stranger Things
Oh,
TV.
yeah, yep.
Okay, so it was a little bit of a tour of the set, and it ended with a video of the Rainbow Room. So we definitely know that we're getting more scenes in the Rainbow Room.
Mhm.
There's a Demogorgon head on a stick, which I
Yep.
guess is like what they kind of like play against, what the actor kind of plays against if there's a Demogorgon in the scene.
They're doing a lot of the, like, digital stuff.
The scanning for like the VFX
Got
department
you.
has already kind of started. There was some wine and bubble bath. Who did you vote? Who did you think it was?
Karen Wheeler.
Yeah, same, but like the majority of people, more than half of the people who voted said that these romantic props belonged to Joyce and Hopper.
I doubt it.
I was like, "Mm,
They don't have time to
bubble
take a
bath?
bubble bath. Yeah.
No, like
No.
Karen Wheeler is the bubble bath queen, and we've already seen her fuzzy slippers and her bathtub.
She's breeding her smut. She's got a bubble bath going, and Ted's downstairs passed out. So come
Yeah.
on now.
Did you notice that this wine, I'm assuming it's because the actor has to actually drink it in the scene, but it's alcohol removed wine, like it's alcohol-free wine?
Oh, yeah?
I'm assuming you won't see the bottle, like,
Yeah.
in the scene because, like, I don't think that this type of wine even, like, existed in the '80s. I don't know. But I was like, "Oh, are they pregnant?"
Yeah, like, what are they doing?
And then you also saw a little shot of some screens and, like, the Duffer
Hmm.
Brothers. I saw someone point out that you can kind of see a Demogorgon in this one shot.
That's what they said. It looks like it's going down a hallway, but
Yeah.
literally the screens looked like what I see without my contacts in,
I
like
know,
just
I can't
blurry.
really, like, tell, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that stuffed cat is still hanging out, so
Mm-hmm.
poor Muse.
Poor Muse. Gone but not forgotten.
The car, I guess, could be, like, a spoiler, like, that hasn't officially been shared by the Stranger Things accounts, but
Give it time. Give it
yeah,
time.
yeah. Now that we've all seen it, they're gonna share it.
Yeah, of course.
What about merch, Stacey? Anything fun going on?
So, merch, I have two separate shops to shout out. One is Jess Rad Illustrations, who has quite the Etsy shop, really amazing prints. She's even done pins, real cool original artwork. Just want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, on a lot of social media, Jess is Shiny Dirty Coin.
Shiny Dirty Coin. Yep, that's it.
Yes.
Do you own any of their stuff?
No. Wait, yes. I think I have one of
The
the
moving things, right?
yeah, the lenticular prints or something, I think that they're called.
Yep.
So, like, it's holographic kind of, like, when you
Hmm.
move it, the people in the print kind of do something. They kiss.
They kiss. So I've always been a huge fan of their stuff. I had the same thing. I have some of those moving cards, and I got Brandy a really cute Stevie pin where I know the backgrounds are either Scoops Ahoy or Skull Rock. So I thought that was really cute.
Yeah, actually, I did just order some stickers too, but they haven't come yet.
Oh, their stickers are good. I have the Punk Steve sticker on a water bottle, and I'm just like, look at you. So big fan of their stuff. And the second shop is actually a friend of mine. They run Lone Wolf Accessories, and they're actually from Georgia. And their stuff is available, and they do a lot of cons, and they do really cool like purses, makeup bags, charms. They're involved in several different fandoms, but their Stranger Things stuff is absolutely amazing. I have no idea where they get this material from, but they make really cute stuff and they're prepping for hopefully having some stuff available for upcoming shows. But they're really sparked, especially when they found out that we're going to be going to that con in October because they'll be there as well.
Okay, nice. I was wondering, are there gonna be vendors at that show?
This is what I heard that they're not going to, just
Okay.
because they want to support local businesses. So I don't know if they'll have anything set up there, but a lot of people who are from Georgia who usually do local cons, they said they're just going to be attending as regular guests and they're going to have
Gotcha.
new stuff available on their Etsy shops for that particular weekend, which I am psyched about.
Oh, that's a really cool way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. I think that kind of ties it up for today.
sounds good.
I hope everyone enjoyed our deep dive.
Yep.
This is going to be super fun, and like we said, we're going to do one more right now next week for the
Yep.
second episode of the show. And then we're going to have something else for you guys, which we're super excited to announce.
Mhm.
We actually have some guests lined up for the next couple of months.
Yes, we
So we
do.
have some super exciting guests. We're not gonna tell you yet, but you will find out soon. So we're gonna have a guest the following week after that, and then we'll get back into a couple episodes of the show for the following 2 weeks. So that's kind of how our schedule will go moving forward. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in next week to hear the weirdo on Maple Street.
Mhm.
And yeah, over and out.
Over and out.
Eddie, I'm not sure I love the idea of you driving.
Oh, I'm starting to suffer. Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
And we're back.
We're back.
So, welcome back to our secret steady segment. If you're kind of just jumping in with this episode, since it was the first episode of our rewatch, just a little heads up that Stacey and I really like fan fiction.
We do.
So we we just couldn't stop at just the show itself. We needed more.
Hmm.
So we do really enjoy fan fiction, and our favorite fan fiction to read is Steve Harrington, our beloved, and Eddie Munson, who makes him the happiest man in the world.
It's
So
true.
we know that that's not for everyone. So if that's not really your thing and you don't really care about the fan fiction that we've been reading this week, then the episode is over and we will talk to you next week. But if you want to join us for this little fun section of our podcast, then keep listening. So,
Hmm.
what have you been reading this week, Stacy?
So I started a new fan fiction called Hellfire Inc., where
Mm,
basically Eddie is a tattoo artist. Hot.
nice. Yes. I love that. I love
Don't you love
that.
that?
Yeah,
Like,
I've read a bunch of fics like with Eddie being a tattoo artist, and it's always so good.
oh my God. And Steve is coming in to get a tattoo covered up. So I only just started it, but Eddie shares a shop with Chrissy, who's his best friend, who's also a tattoo artist.
Oh, I love that.
Found that
Yeah.
kind of quirky and cute, but I will report back on it. And I finished up Late Bloomers, which that was fantastic. Thank you for recommending that.
Oh, you finished it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm
You'll
so
love it.
excited. I should do that today. Maybe.
Yeah. It's on the list. What about you? What have
Uh,
you been reading?
Okay, so I did finish the fic that I had mentioned last week, Accidentally Absconding with an Impulsive Idiot, and it was
Ooh.
so great. So definitely recommend that. That was
Hmm.
the road trip fic.
Yeah.
And then I had last week also said that I downloaded Summertime Sadness, the Onion Chiver
Oh, yeah.
Hanahaki fic.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. It was amazing. It ripped my
Really?
heart out just like I knew it would. It was short and sweet and just, like, perfect. So, definitely worth checking out. I love
Hmm.
that Hanahaki disease, like, premise of, like, coughing up the flowers and just really good, like, angst, like, Steve feeling like he's in love and that Eddie doesn't love him back the same way,
Well,
but he's not always the smartest cookie, so
he isn't.
I just love how Asriel writes the two of them. So definitely super good. Loved that. Now, I also decided to do this to myself. I'm not sure why. So somebody was talking about this fic and how they started it and it's not finished. And there are 31 out of 34 chapters, and like the
Damn.
last 3 chapters have not been posted, and it hasn't been updated since December. Now, I'm gonna say that's not too bad. It's only like 3 months, and apparently this fic has been posting over the course of like a year or more than a year. So the chapters kind of come every month or 2.
Okay.
So it could eventually be finished, but the way that a couple people were talking about it, it was definitely like worth reading even if it never gets finished kind of thing.
Ooh.
So I was like so intrigued and I was like, I don't know why I'm going to do this to myself, but I want to start it.
Yeah.
So I also loved that it was like a modern AU because I tend to just like that once in a while, and I feel
Yeah.
like I haven't read a lot of longer fics that are a modern AU. It's a lot of shorter fics for that. So this is called Rolled a 1 on the check, Rolled a 20 on the save by a puckish wit, and I just kind of started it. I've read the first few chapters, but Steve breaks up with Nancy and he lives in this apartment building and Dustin is his like neighbor across the hall.
Yeah.
Lucas lives downstairs and I haven't really gotten too into it, but I guess somehow the boys are going to kind of convince Steve to play D&D with them,
Oh, I
and
love
they
that.
play D&D online with this, like, professional dungeon master who
Oh my
runs
God.
runs an online D&D game. So I mean, you can
I'm
tell who
intrigued. Yep.
that's gonna be.
Mhm.
So, I'm super excited to kind of, like, get into this because 'cause I've heard really good things, and it seems really
Ooh.
fun. And it's not like a smutty story. I
Mhm.
think it's, like, rated teen, so I
Yeah.
don't think it's really like a smutty story, but it's super fun already. Like, Steve finds Dustin in the hallway and he's locked himself out of his apartment, and
Of course.
Claudia is like a nurse and works overnight, so he ends up like letting Dustin sleep on his couch, and like
Aw.
that was like their first kind of like meeting so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can already tell I'm really gonna like this story, and I know a lot of people have read it and are excited for, like, the last few chapters to maybe eventually happen, so
Mhm.
I'll have to just join in on the wait for the last few chapters
I
with
love that.
everyone else who has read it, so not sure if I'm gonna regret this decision for myself, but it is what it is.
Man, now I'm intrigued. Whew.
Right? Right? It sounds so fun, so yeah, so I think that's pretty much it for our rating week.
Yep.
And this was already a super long episode with our deep dive, so we're going to keep it short again today, but we will, as always, keep you posted on what we've been reading.
Of course.
All right, over and out.
Over and out.